Cuties, I'm Brittany with Stitches of Love Quilting, and in this video tutorial, we are going to make square and a square blocks for our Happy Place 14 box, which is our finishing kit. So this is how to make the really cute little square and a square pieces that go between your blocks and your sashings, okay? So in your kit, you have your perfect point piecing paper. So you're just gonna trim these out, not exactly along the line, but just trim between them so that you have your squares ready to use. Of course, going to do all the cutting instructions that your pattern calls for, and we're gonna get started, okay? So you have, for each little block that you're gonna make, you're gonna have 4 of the little white triangles, and you're gonna have 1 blue piece for the center. So the first thing you're gonna do, you're gonna take your paper, and you're gonna flip it over to the back side, and you're gonna take your sew line glue pen, and you're gonna put just a little dab of glue in the center, and you are gonna take your fabric and put it right in place. Now our fabric is cut to exactly the size that we need, the 2.5 inches. So you're gonna wanna hold it up. You can see I'm holding it up, and I'm just making sure that it's lined up perfectly with my printed square. So let's see, can you see through? Kind of, you can see, but basically underneath I have the wrong side of the fabric slightly glued to the back side or wrong side of my printed paper, right? So you can see your numbers, and on the other side you see your fabric. So now we're gonna take one of our squares. This is so easy, y'all. And we are gonna we're gonna flip it over, and we're gonna put fabric right sides together, and you're just gonna line this up perfectly in the corner. So your little cut square is gonna line up perfectly with your larger cut square. See? That's it. Now flip it back over and go to your sewing machine, and you're gonna sew from point to point between numbers 1 and 2, okay? And with the magic of camera, we have that. So you can see I've done that. It's sewn. And let me tell you a little bit about how I sewed it. And we tell you this in the pattern, of course. So I backstitch at the beginning and end of the line. That way when you're tearing the papers out, it doesn't pull that stitch out. And I also bring the stitch down to a much smaller size. That makes it a lot easier to pull the fabric out. That's why we do that. So those 2 tips help a lot. And depending on your machine, you probably have a cool button where it automatically does that backstitch at the beginning and end of a line for you. So play with your machine a little bit. I'm really impressed with the buttons on my machine. Okay, so now that you've gone this far, you want to give yourself your 1/4 inch seam, right? So, well, first off, you're gonna wanna flip this over and then glance at the back and make sure that it's actually coming all the way to the corner, and it does. This is basically giving you that perfect diagonal seam without having to have a perfect 1/4 inch seam allowance. That's the benefit of these papers for this particular block. But now we wanna trim it away. So I have my block sewn. I'm folding the paper back because I don't wanna cut my paper. And this handy little tool out of 1/4, we are simply going to, you wanna have your paper side up, and you're simply you'll see that little notch right here on the ruler catches this fold of your paper, and you're just gonna trim. So voila, and then little scraps. So now this is totally ready to go. A few tools that I like to use on top of the ruler. I like to use a roller. I like to use this when I'm doing regular piecing as well. And then also on the 4-in-1 Essentials tool, one end is like that wood kind of pressing area. I like to use that in this case too. I'm just gonna give it a little press. You can also use your real iron and give it a press as well. So now to continue, you are going to turn your paper back over and you go to your next number, number 3. So on this corner, we'll do the same thing. We will put our fabric perfectly lined up in the corner. So that's why we're using the measurements we're using, because you're gonna have no trimming at the end, which is really nice. And so then again, right sides together, and you'll go back to your machine and you'll sew between 1 and 3. Then you'll flip it over, trim just like we just did, and then you'll move to number 4 and number 5. So you just work your way around, and then at the end, you will pull your paper away and you have a perfect block that you don't have to trim, which I think is lovely. Now, another way you can do this, if you don't feel comfortable with the papers, they're included in your kit, but if you don't want to use them, let me tell you what you can do. So easy, you can eliminate the paper. Now, let me tell you, when you eliminate the paper, you're now putting yourself in a position where you have to have an absolutely perfect 1/4 inch seam allowance. So your blocks aren't going to be as perfect, right? Like we use this as a tool to have perfection. So you would do the same thing though, because the measurements stay the same for what you're sewing. You would simply put this on a corner and you would sew diagonal to diagonal. Now I will tell you on this, I would sew just like a needle width into the outer corner from the diagonal to diagonal, so that when you flip over, your fabric is going to come all the way to the corner. And you want to make sure your 1/4 inch seam allowance is really good. And then you would just trim that excess fabric off so it's not in your quilt. So if you don't want to use the papers, you'll simply work your way around the corners, putting them in each corner. But I do think the paper makes life so much easier and it's just way more accurate. So I hope that this quick tutorial helped you. The number one thing I'll say is just hold it up to the light. Make sure that your 2.5 inch square is perfectly lined up with the 2.5 inch square that's printed. As long as you get that one step right, it's going to be an absolutely perfect block and you're going to love it. And then it's very satisfying also to just rip all the paper out. It's like fun. You can sit there and like watch a YouTube video or something and rip it all out. So that's how easy it is to make it. We use this tool to make it accurate, to make it quicker for you, and less cutting and all that good stuff. So I hope you enjoyed making these and making your full Happy Place quilt. If you have any questions at all on assembling it, don't hesitate to reach out. And if you haven't joined this block of the month yet, at the time of filming, this is still available. We're doing another round of rekitting it right now, so you can still join and make this super cute quilt. With that being said, happy stitching.